Alright everybody, my name's Nick and this is actually my first YouTube video, and today we're going to show you how to make a basic cabinet shaker door. And always remember, use common sense
and safety first.
Awesome. Alright, so the first step in this process is you have to of course get your wood. And so basically I've already got the wood that I'm going to use. I'm just using basic poplar. You could use oak, but I am using a premium select wood you can buy by the linear foot from your local hardware store. Once you have your wood selected and you have your cabinet boxes built and ready. Once you have your cabinet boxes built and ready, you can actually take your measurements. So like I said, once you have your wood, then you can go in and start taking measurements and come back out to the shop and start making your cuts, cutting everything to length. And so I'm gonna show you how to do that and the step-by-step process on that stage. All right, everybody. So I'm set up in here. So the next stage is you've got to get your measurements off your cabinet boxes. So the first step is to measure your cabinet opening because you're going to add an inch to that cabinet opening for the doors because you want it to overlap a ½ inch on each side. That's how I'm going to do it. So measure the opening left and right, the width, and then of course the height. Add an inch to each of those measurements. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about cutting the boards.
You need a notebook to write down your measurements.
That's right, you need a notebook to write down your measurements. That's something I left out earlier. So it's always good to take notes and to draw things out. Because that will reduce the amount of mistakes that you make. So good thinking, Nicholas. Always take notes and draw diagrams. Alright, so I'm getting ready to cut the side rails at 24 1/8. And so what I like to do is actually down, I'll show you real quick. Down board, I like to clamp them together after I have gotten the boards lined up down on the cutting end. I like to put a good fresh cut on the end of these boards because it's usually a little bit rougher. So I want to make sure I've got my tape measure on there because I want to make sure I've got enough length to where I actually make my 24 1/8 inch cut. And I've got two boards clamped together, so that way when I cut, I get two boards that are exactly the same. But I gotta clamp them together, do my clean cut on the end, just shave off a little, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll measure and mark. And then I always mark to where I'm cutting the mark away. That's how it's done. Just let the tool do the work. Try not to force it. And I'll use these boards to mark my cut on this next cut here. Alright, so I've gotten both of my cuts done at 24 1/8. So this is 4 boards. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are going to stay together. I'm going to keep them paired since I know they're exactly the same. There's no tolerance at all since I cut them at the same time. But I'm going to use these, the width of these, to include in my next measurement so that I can cut the shorter middle piece for the upper and lower of each cabinet door. And the total overall length needs to be 15 1/4, including the width of these boards. So, and it needs 2 widths because there's going to be a sideboard on each side of the cabinet door. So I'm going to go ahead and just put these up down here and then grab my tape measure and butt them directly up against this board. And then when you do that, now you end up measuring a total of 15 1/4. Remember marking just to the outside of 15 1/4 with your pencil. As long as I'm cutting that line away and no more, no less, then I'll get an exact 15 1/4 inch length overall. But when you mark it on that, and then if you go out and measure it, that's what I'm saying is that center board on top and bottom is going to end up being less than 15 1/4. This just stops you from having to do the math of, okay, I need 15 1/4. That's what you need right there. Alright everybody, I've got all the boards cut for the side rails and the upper and lower pieces of the frame of the shaker door. And So that's what I've got here. So really the next step is you want to go ahead and set these up and make sure that you have the faces of the door, especially if you're going to be staining them. Even so, if you're just going to paint them, you just want to get like the nicest part of the board facing outward. All right, guys. So I got them. You can see I've got them all set up. This is a great time once you know you've got the faces out and where you want them. It's a great time just to double check the measurement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check the measurement, the height on here, and I'm going to move these measurements in, these markers, so I know where my board needs to start for the cut. One other thing I forgot to mention earlier is the height of your blade. You can adjust that with your table saw. The depth of that cut that I just did in the groove, I have set that to 3/8 of an inch. So that's the final cut. Took me 7 minutes, almost 8. And so that's what you're looking for on those inner parts. So that way when the board comes in and you're screwing it together, on this top edge here, you don't see that groove cut through, but you're also not taking too much meat away from right here. So when I screw in the top screw, it'll hit solid wood. When I screw in the other one, it's gonna probably hit a little bit in that groove, but it'll still have plenty of board to grab onto. But yeah, that's a good cut. That dado blade does really well compared to trying to do this with a skinnier, normal table saw blade. And my fingers are freezing. All right. So this is my piece that I'm gonna need to do pocket holes. We had marked pretty much generally where we want the pocket holes to be. On my previous doors, I actually did one here and one further in. The further in you go towards the groove side, the inner side, the more you're gonna hit the meat, the more you're gonna miss hitting the meat of this board here. So you can see here where the groove is. If I were to flip that over, you can see the further down I go towards the middle, the more of the meat I'm gonna miss hitting in that board. So the further up I can go, the better. I think I'll grab onto it better. This is my Craig system. Yeah, and by the way, this is my first YouTube video. I don't get paid for any of this stuff. That's just stuff like I said, YouTube it and figure out what works the best for somebody who's trying to be frugal with their remodel and not buy the most expensive tools, and just get the job done the best way for the cheapest possible. Metal guide hole, and then go ahead and start running it before you hit the wood. Make sure you're going in straight. All right, so I've got all my pocket holes drilled for all of these short inner pieces here. So I'm going with a little bit shorter width to keep it on towards the outer side of the board of the cabinet door, so I can get the screw to go into more of the meat of this board where it's not grooved as much. And so basically I've set both of these boards up to where I've got them nice and tight. They're just sitting there. I don't have them clamped or anything, but I've got them nice and tight. So I want to get a pretty close measurement to the inner diameter of each of these boards. So I'm going to hold sturdy on this side, pull my measuring tape out, and it comes to basically when I did this the first time. That's why it's good to take notes and stuff, because you can always go back. So the first time I measured an inner diameter of 10 1/8. So then I added a 1/2 inch because I wanted a 1/4 inch of the board going into the groove on each side. So I actually measured and cut 10 5/8 wide, and then I made sure that the top of this is perfectly in place because I'm measuring inner to inner. So I'm gonna hold firm on that board so it doesn't shift, and I won't even touch this one over here, and I'm coming to 19, just a touch more. That'll be a 19 1/6, 19 1/6. So and last time I measured 18 7/8, so it was a slightly smaller height door, all things considered. So you can imagine this get down pretty critical here at the end here. You want to make sure you don't mess it up at the end, because it can cause hassle for you. So yeah, it's pretty much 19. So if I'm going to do the same thing, or whatever measurement I come up for the inner, and I'll add a 1/2 inch. So I want a 1/4 inch overhang on each end, 2/4 inches. Added together equals a 1/2 inch. So I'll measure that one, make sure it doesn't move. That one comes exactly to 19. So these ones actually measured out a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna, my center board's going to be 10 5/8 wide, and then since I'm going 19, I'm going to go to 19 1/2. So this one's going to be slightly different than the last one. I'm at 10 5/8, and then I'm going to go 19 1/2. So I'm going to cut two boards from my 1/4 inch sheet of birch plywood. It's 1/4 inch thick, and they're big 4 foot by 8 foot pieces. All right, so I got my piece cut for both cabinet doors at the 10 5/8 and then by 19 1/2. Now what I'm going to do is actually start assembling it and putting the clamps on it and aligning everything perfectly before I start screwing it together. But here's what I was talking about, where you can take like I think I paid like $15 or $10 or I don't even remember. It was a very cost-effective tubing for another something else I was working on the refrigerator, and this is perfect for cutting off little bitty like 1/4 inch or slightly less than 1/4 inch thick pieces off of this tube, and this is actually a 1/4 inch tube itself, so it's perfect. And you can take these little pieces, and I've cut several of them. I don't know if you can see them there or not, but I've cut 8, so I can put two in each, and like there'll be one here and one here in the groove. And so what I'll do is actually you can just go through and just drop these in there like that. As long as you don't cut them too wide. This one's cut a little bit too wide. I try to cut them just perfect. These are actually cut. I just cut these a little bit too wide. Not a big deal. But that one, so that way they go in there, so you can actually see the little pieces in there. And so when you do this on all 4 sides, they'll squish down when you put the wood in there, and so it centers this board in between all of the grooves when you have 4 of these in there. So they're actually really easy to put in there, and they stay. Like I said, they'll stay in their spot because you just put them in there. And I'm just going to lay this back down like that, and so those little pieces won't move. So now I'm going to be clamping my piece down to my station, and I'm also clamping these two pieces together. So that's good. This still looks good up here. I'm going to leave it be, and then I'm going to get this screwed together so I can pull it apart. I'll start recording when I get ready to screw this thing.
Face.
Let me show my face. So that door's done.
Hiya.
No.
Hiya.
So
Let's look at this.
let's just look at it and see. So yeah, I mean that's it right there.
There's
So
the
that's a
bird
shaker
crack.
door. Yeah, it sure is. Stupid bird. I cleaned it off pretty good. But yeah, you can tell there's very, very little, if no vibration. This board doesn't shift around at all. So this one's gonna go, I'll make that the bottom of the cabinet door. This is perfect up here. Perfectly flush up here. You can see, you look down at, I mean, very, very minimal sanding will need to be done on these basic shaker doors. So I might, my wife and I work on this together, might end up seam sealing this inner edge a little bit. But really, if we don't have to if we don't want to. Because it literally,
Blah, 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 blah,
you can tell,
blah, blah, blah,
perfect 1/4 inch all the way around. And that's the front again there. And then you can tell this end down here, no grooves. And you can see slightly off there, but nothing that a light sanding can't take care of. So this is me, Nick, and my son Nicholas.
He's
Jr.
a Nicholas.
I'm also Nicholas, but I go by Nick. And so this is how you make a shaker door in the cold weather in Texas or anywhere. Really not that difficult, but fun little project. Put a little sweat equity into your house. I'm a big advocate for good financial decisions. Buy in the low end of a neighborhood with a house that's got good bones. Just needs some love. And do a little bit of work yourself. Maybe pay a professional to do some jobs, but saving money on certain aspects of any given job. And ultimately, you can come out ahead financially and have a good time and learn some new things and enjoy some time with your kiddos. Get my girls out here. So, and remember, always remember to use common sense
And safety.
and safety first.
You'll see me in other videos.
You wanna tap it?
Yeah.